We hope that you have enjoyed the first volume in our Aladdin 4D tutorial series.
In this, the second volume of the series, we'll continue our look at Aladdin's many features. So let's continue. We're going to do something with a little more finished feel to it. Science fiction, space scenes, space genre in particular, are very popular with 3D animators, so let's do something like that. I've prepared a couple of bitmaps here I want you to take a look at. What we're going to do is we're going to make a dome-shaped saucer with some protrusions on it. This is a 16 color brush that I set up. We're going to use Opal Show to take a look at it here, and you can see that it is a radial type. I've gone ahead and randomly placed different values of a black and white bitmap into it with black lines radiating from the center. The center itself has been blacked out, and then I've drawn some simple geometric shapes around the edges. The image was drawn in DPaint 4 and is a 16 color image. I don't want to use this image like it is because of the amount of aliasing going on, and I want to use it as a bump map, so we needed to smooth it. So I went ahead and loaded it into Art Department Pro and smoothed it out, and this is the result of that. And as you can see now, it's a fairly blurred image. I used the simple blur operator in AD Pro to do that. This is the only texture we'll use in the drawing I'm about to show you. So let's go back here to Aladdin and draw our spaceship. And like I say, I want a saucer shape in the center. I want two projections coming off. The front will be a sort of a scoop shape, and the back will be a hollow shape where we'll put the engines. So let's start with a front shape. I'm going to use the Make an Arc and make a default 360 by 12. And I'm going to set the attach point at the origin. Selecting this tool here, which is the slant tool, I'm going to turn the mirror type on. Grab any one of these points on this side and pull it out, and then apply that, and that will make this shape here. What it did is it pulled the points equally on both sides. Let's shrink this down a little bit vertically to about that size right there. Setting my attach point at the origin again and getting my extrude defaults, I'm going to go 10,000 on the Y with a final X% of about 40 and a final Z of about 10% in about 3 segments here. And we'll accept that, select the shape, and extrude it. If we rotate the view a little bit here, you can see what type of shape was created. This will be the front of the ship. It's not nearly long enough. Let's go to the Z. I'm going to go ahead and grab the object here, and using the resize, stretch it out so that it's quite a bit longer. There, I'm pleased with that. Now this back and this front end caps to the extruded shell were grouped when it was extruded, so I'm going to hold down my Control key and select only that back one and group it separately. And setting my attach point at the origin, selecting that back shell, getting the extrude defaults up, and going negative on the Y this time with a final X of about 80 and a final Z of about 80. And the 3 segments will be fine again. We'll extrude it backwards. This will be the engine shell. I'm done with these 2 end caps now. I won't need those. This one that's in the front that's grouped separately I'll leave in place because it'll be the front of the ship. So we'll delete those 2. Okay, we've got that. This engine cowling here, I'm going to move backwards out of the way a little bit, and the other object here is not grouped. I'm going to group it and then move it forward out of the way a little bit. In the center here is where we're going to make our shell. So let's go ahead and select everything and hide it, and go back to the Y flat view, zoom in a little bit. Make another arc. This time we'll use 180 degrees, and we'll go ahead and we'll use the 12 segments. And, well, that's a little bit smoother than I wanted. Let's delete it. We won't need that much resolution. Let's make it again with only 6. It'll match one side of the extrusions that we did. And setting the attach point at the origin again, grabbing a hold of one part, one point, and pulling it out, and applying the slant tool will stretch it out again. And let's grab it and shrink it down to about that size right there. Okay, I'm going to sweep this around the center, and using the Z-axis as the active axis, about 36 segments will be a good resolution for us. And again, this connect glass is very important. This is the first point in the poly. This is the last point in the poly in this particular polygon. This is the last segment, and I don't want to let it participate in the sweep, so I've turned it off by saying connect last off. And we'll sweep this, and this template that we had here we'll go ahead and delete. So if I show all again here, and take a look from the x-axis, and let's back off so we can see a little bit. I'm going to go into isometric so we can see clearly what's going on here. Zoom into about the right distance, and as you can see, this shell here is coming up into the ship a little bit. Let's select it and make it a little bit smaller in the z-axis. There we go, like so. And this shell similarly is coming in that direction. And let's do the same with it, make it just slightly smaller. Let's look down from the Z and see what what it looks like here. And it looks like this object has come completely into the ship, which is the way we want it. This one hasn't, and it's not long enough. So we're going to go ahead and increase its length along the Y there. And now we'll select it, and holding down the Alt key, pull it inside the ship a little bit so that this edge won't show. Now these polygons, as they come down, will intersect this top polygon in the engine cowling somewhere and make an angle like this. This is exactly what we want. Looking from the X again looks good. Looking from the Y, of course, we'll see it dead on, so it's not important. If we went ahead and used the ship in this configuration right here, it has no top or bottom, although it does have a front and a back. This obviously, well, at least to me, indicates this is the front of the ship. This is going to be the back of the ship. We need something to show that this is the top of the ship. So let's flat view in the Y, and I want to start drawing at the origin, so I'm going to move the entire ship to the origin. I select the right mouse button, click over the page move gadget, which puts the attach point at the origin. Select the top of the ship. That's the point I want to jump down. Then select all with the right mouse button, click here, and finally a snap. And now the entire ship, as you can see, has moved down to the origin. Okay, let's flat view. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to start to draw a freehand poly here. Back off a little bit, and attach point at the origin, get my freehand tool, and I want it to poke down inside the top surface a little bit, so I'll set it right about there. Hitting my tab key, I'll bring up an angled slant like that, a relatively flat part coming in like this, and then we'll draw a little dome on top. Just like this, dropping a point any place that I feel one needs to go, and that might be good. Again, I want to check and make sure this is the only polygon we're working with, so I'll hide everything else. That was a right mouse button click over the hide gadget. I'm going to open the manual mode. Here we have an X of 0. Here I want an X of 0 also, and I do have one, so I'm fine. So attach point on one of those 2 points. This is the last polygon in this last segment in this poly, and I don't want it turned on for the sweep. This is the next to the last one, and unfortunately we can't turn it off, but it's easy to remove, and we'll see how. I'll select the Y, select this polygon, and sweep it around there. Now this is the top. We can get rid of our template poly, or you could jump it into a new space if you wanted to keep it. Now these polygons here, I'm going to rotate it a little bit so we can see it clear. And let's zoom in. These polygons that form the base of this, we don't want to keep. So I'm going to rotate the view to a point where none of the polygons in front are in the way of selecting it. If I selected it, everything selects. But if I hold down the control key, obviously only one selects. And if I hold down the control and the shift, and then just hold the left mouse button down, it'll wind through those and we can get rid of them. Okay, we've selected, well, we went ahead and we selected part of one of those polys. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and find a new position where I can select them from. Here, obviously, I'm not going to hit any of the polygons here, so we can go ahead and wind through them here at this point. Okay, and we have them all. If I were to group them here, and then select them and hide everything except them, you'll see that we only have the bottom of that sweep, and that's what we want to get rid of. So let's select it and delete it. Okay, showing all, we should have our ship very much in place now. Yeah, that's very much what I wanted to see. Looks real good. Let's think about shading on this object. The object is symmetrical along the X and the X-axis. On the Z-axis, it's symmetrical except for that top dome. Let's go ahead and let's shade it top and bottom halves. I'm going to go to isometric, And we'll hide this. We'll worry about this in a minute because it's a special case. We want only the top polygons in one shading group and the bottom polygons in another shading group. Now, it's not going to shade across this area because none of these points are the same as any of the other points here. So let's back off a little bit and use our area or our multiple select tool and go ahead and select just the top half of this object. Now, if I were to rotate this, you'd see that we only have selected the top half of all of the objects that we've created there. So I'm going to now go ahead and group those separately so I can select them anytime we want to, just like that. Now, another thing that's important is in the shading, I want to have everything, or in the sweeps, when these polygons are created, although they look flat, they're not perfectly flat. And since we want to do a more finished work here, I want this to render as perfect as possible. So I'm going to convert them all to triangles so that they'll render very flat. So we'll select all and use the Tools menu item Triangles. It'll convert them all to triangles. Grouping information is still intact in Group 1, where I grouped these together. They're still grouped. In Group 2, of course, your original groups are still in place. So let's go back to Group 1 and select this and say Shading. Then we'll turn on the Thong. We want the Assign Adjacent on for everything in this first group. We'll hide those. We'll select everything that's left here and group them also. And let's go ahead and shade those with Thong and Assign Adjacent on. So they're all right. Okay, let's show everything and select just the dome and hide everything else and work with it. Now in the shading group, if I flat view here and zoom in a little bit, I want this to be Thong shaded, and I want this to be Thong shaded, but I don't want this to average across here. Similarly here, I don't want this to be rounded in here. So I'm going to multiple select just this platform in here, just like that, and group it separately. Now if I select here, you can see that the platform remains unselected. I'm going to say Shading. We'll turn on Thong for it. And that shaded the dome and this. Even though they're in the same shading assigned group, there will be no shading across here because we have no points touching. So we'll hide that, and we'll go ahead and select the ring and set the shading on for it. So we're in good shape on our shading. Our ship is built. Our shading is finished. We'll go ahead and we'll use a gas, I think, as a flame coming out of the back here. And it might be kind of fun to have the ship descend out of the top of the screen, slowly rotate in front of the camera, and then have the gas begin to escape from the back as though an engine fired, and have the ship race away from us. That's where we'll head. Right now, though, let's think about the texture. I showed you the bitmap we're going to use. Let's go ahead and select the top part here and hide it, and work with these two objects here. Let's take the view and flat view, zoom down a little bit, and select the saucer itself. We'll go to another shading group where this is completely grouped, and we'll say Textures, add a texture list, Control, and we'll call this main or saucer. And for the member control, we'll say Select, Show Bitmaps. There aren't any loaded, so we'll go to Work, Aladdin 4D, Textures, which is where I have that stored, and it's called Dome Top 24. It's an odd size 24-bit, 385 by 387 if we select it, and except you can see here 385 by 387, 16 million colors, and there's only one frame in this particular texture. We can use multiple frames. The program will detect them automatically and put animations on objects if we want to. Now I want to use this as a bump map, and we wanted at full strength on the bump, and the color, very, very small contribution, maybe 15% would be fine. Let's try that. And let's say match on that. We better use the suggested to change the bitmap, or the X and Y indices so that it reflects a bitmap in use. And we want to anti-alias. This is especially important if you're going to be very close to an object or if you're going to be using bump maps. It's particularly important. So it looks like we're in good shape on that. Let's accept it here. And we've got our bitmap applied to there. Now the back engine cowling and the front engine, I'm going to use the same bitmap. As you saw, it has a little blue arrows coming in here, and the blue arrow will be on the dome, and then it will also be on this back part, and it ought to look very nice that way. So we'll go ahead and select this one and clone it. And now under Control, we'll go ahead and we'll stretch it out along the X a little bit. So I want to use only the middle 4% or so. So we'll start from 3 here on both sides. We don't want it to change over time, and go to 70% of the bitmap. That'll lock in the X 40% in the center of the bitmap, and that's all that'll be used on these objects. The Y will use both of them, so that it'll stretch from the top here to the bottom of these objects. And we want to make sure we project along the Z, which I didn't do for the others, so we'll have to change. So let's name this, how about extensions? And we'll go ahead and map those. Like I say, we mismapped this along the wrong axis, so I'm going to go ahead, select them. And anytime you want to remap, you have to have your object selected and tell it to project along the Z. The reason I'm doing that is because we're looking straight down the Z, and I want the bitmap to be applied to this just like I drew it. So it'll lay on there just like that. So we've got everything in place there. Let's swap our buffers. So we've got our shell back here, and select all, and we can go ahead and group it again so that we can select it easily. Let's set our textures here, and we want to use the same thing we used for the saucer. So I'm going to clone the saucer list and make sure everything's in order just like we thought, 0 to 1, and we'll go ahead and apply it. Now what that does is it puts the same texture that's on the large dome here on the small dome, so it'll appear to be a coherent part of the ship. All of these radial lines will line up, but we'll still have plenty of detail instead of that big black circle up here. This black circle will still appear on the top of the dome, though. That'll look quite nice. We need to think about attribute lists. One of the things I found particularly effective for space scenes on attributes is to go ahead and use a completely black attribute list along with a bump map, like we'd said, with fully reflective and a hardness about halfway and a fairly large highlight size, about so. This will work very nice. Let's say match on this, and you'll see what I'm talking about. One more thing I want to do is have a background, so let's load that now. We'll add one, and let's name it background so we can tell which one it is. Member control, I'm going to use a bitmap that was sent to me by John Spoford, which is a nice space scene. We'll go to work. In my pictures, deep, which is 24-bit files, I've got one called Sci-Fi Sky. This image has some gorgeous, I believe it was digitized, although I don't know, I have to ask John sometime, he could have hand-drawn it, but it has some very nice gaseous objects in the background that were captured. So we'll use that suggested, and I do want to use full color, but I don't want full strength out of this bitmap. I want it to be fairly subtle so it doesn't compete with the ship too much. So somewhere around 39 or 40% ought to be about right. And so we'll accept that. And we might want to take a first look here at what we've done so far. Let's go out of isometric, rotate the view a little bit, get something so we can see what's going on, zoom in on the ship a little, and set our render options up for light, fill, textures, Phong, which we've already set. If you remember, we Phong shaded the top and the bottom halves of this object. We haven't Phong shaded this yet, so I want to, yes we did, we did do that. And we want the background on. Okay, and for screen mode, let's look at a 320 by 200 opal here just for the first glances, and let's render it. Like I say, the background sky is very nice, and there you can see our ship. It has the texture in place. One of the novelties about a lot of the rendering devices that we use is that while they're rendering, access isn't full, so the color isn't as pure as it is once it's stopped. You may notice the difference this time. You know, that ship looks quite nice. You can tell from the amount of detail that's present here that, of course, when you saw me model it, I didn't model any of these details. All of these details are being derived from the texture map that was put on there. And as a result, we can model this ship in only 5 or 6 or 7 or 800 polygons with no problem at all. Looks real good. Let's go ahead and set up the gas that we want to use. I'm going to go back to the editor here, and we're going to go ahead and ask to add a gas. Now gas is, well, the one we're going to use here is, we're going to use just the simplest case. We'll use a strength perhaps of 10, and entry and exit won't change. The samples per pixel for 4 would be fine for this. I want to do a little more finished work, so I'll probably use 6 on it. And the fall off, although the default is set at 1.0, I find on spherical gases I like a 2 or a 2.5 much better than that. This determines the nearness to the edge of the container of the sphere, as well as the density of the gas at the edge of the sphere inside the container. And 2.5 makes for a very nice result on a default spherical gas. We won't use any turbulence at all in this particular example, and so we'll accept that. Now I want the gas to be coming out of the back here, so let's flat view in the X so we can see a little better here. Go into isometric and back off a little bit. And let's see, let's go ahead and select this and set the right mouse button over here is going to set the attach point at the center of that object. Selecting the gas container and a right mouse button click here will center it to that. And we're going to select it and we're going to resize it in this fashion here so that it doesn't stick out too much. Now remember that the gas is in a sphere within this container, so we can go ahead and leave it stick out a little bit if we want to with no problem. Let's go back to the Z here and look down from the top. And I want it to be wider, so of course we can go ahead and we can do that. Let's make it about that wide. And I want it to be longer. Let's make it a little bit longer here, about so. Even though they're rectangular, the sphere inside this rectangle is going to be mathematically impressed on the gas is able to handle this type of size shift. So we can make all kinds of oblong gases and so on. Let's pull it out a little bit more. And you can visualize the sphere here. The gas is going to be coming out like that. Could be nice to make it a little bit longer, like so. And it looks like we're in good shape. Let's go out of isometric and flat view in the Y here. Rotate down a little bit, the nose down. I use the 7 key for that. I'm using the 3 key to rotate it backwards. We're going to set it about like this, which might be about the angle when it takes off. Let's page move up a little bit. And gases will not operate unless the container is Phong shaded, and you have to use an attribute list. Let's name this one so that we know. We'll call it EX, well, let's call it jet. And under the member control, it's very important to realize that the gas derives its color from here if you're not using bitmaps on it, and you have to have a transparency of at least 1. So let's make this a solid blue gas, very violent blue. Reflectivity and hardness and so on have no use on gases. They're not used at all. Only the color and the transparency level are used for gases, as well as show flags, which are very important, and we'll probably use one on this since we're going to have the gas come on at a certain time. So we'll accept that. I want to do a quick test render here. Render options, we have our Phong on, but transparency has to be on in order for the gas to activate. And we'll take a look from this direction and see what our gas is going to look like. So our ship is pointed away from us. And in the back we have our gas coming out of the back. And that looks quite nice. It might not be quite strong enough. And I can still see the ship, this main saucer of the ship within the gas. So I'm going to select those polygons and give them a separate attribute list. I think the gas could be a little bit larger as well. Doesn't quite stretch from side to side, and I'd like it to. So let's go back to the editor here, flat view in the Z, and I'm going to select the container and simply resize it slightly larger like so. Now these polygons here are the ones inside the main dome that we were able to see. I'm going to go ahead and select one of the polygons, or one of the points on that polygon. I made it the attach point. I'm going to use the tracker tool. Track at ATP means that it's going to always keep this, it's going to treat this current attach point as though it's the origin. So I can zoom in on this object, go to different views if I want to, and it will always keep that image there. It makes it very convenient to work with. So looking down from the Z, I'm going to back off a little bit so I can see the edge of the container here. And it looks like I want to take 1, 2, 3 segments of that. So I'm going to hide this so it's not quite in the way. Holding down my Control and Shift, going to go ahead and move across here. I'm depressing my left mouse button and holding it down. It's selecting all the polygons that join that point. We might as well go ahead and get these as well. And I'm going to group those separately here in group level 2 and give them a separate attribute list. And we better call it rear saucer or something, so we can tell it apart from the others. Under member control, I'm just going to make sure that it's always black here. I can do that by changing the color to black or changing the reflectivity black, or both. For instance, if I had this as a red of that, but the reflectivity was 0, it'll never show. And so this is fine. We'll just leave them all black, just like that, using the match. And those polygons will always be black in the polygon, or in the render. We'll never see them inside the gas. So we're in good shape on everything. Let's think about our animation here. Let's go back to the Y. I'm going to select everything. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm going to select just the saucer, the main saucer, and set the attach point at its center. And I'm in the Y-active. The freehand tool will begin to draw from that point. I'm going to draw a line straight down like so. This line is going to be a path. The ship is going to descend this path. And so I want to make the polygon a path, turning on the movement status. And I want the, well, let's just accept that at this point, because I want to show you how keyframing can be done here. So we'll say preview animation. We have to pick out a number of frames first. If we have it descend for 4 seconds and take away and leave for 3 seconds, that'll be a total of 7, which is 210 frames. So we'll go along that route. And if we say begin, go ahead and escape and get back. Now when we alter this path, the 1 to 211 here is reflected for 210 frames. Of course, complete completion will loop back to the first frame, which is what this 1 is. So we want this to descend for the first 4 seconds. And so if I change this to 120, I'm sorry, 120 on the exit, it shows us that that is 0.5666 in time. These are for angle rotation up here. This is for movement. So I want to make sure that my delay out, which is the final time that the path will complete its movement, is 0.566, just like above. And now it will move during that time. Again, this timeline is only for rotation and has nothing to do with movement. This movement, the movement's all specified down here. We'll also want it to ease into its final position. So we'll give it an ease out of 1. The ease in, we can leave it 0, which means that it won't be affected. So it'll appear to move in and slow as it reaches its destination. So we'll accept that. And we'll go ahead now and select everything in the ship here. And go ahead and assign it to that path. Let's take a quick look here. I press the Q key for quick mode, and yeah, it's going to descend. It should reach that point at 120, and at frame 120 it did reach that point. Okay, now for the takeoff, for the ship leaving us, we'll want to run a path from here out into space. So I'm going to flat view in the Z after I set my attach point to the end there. Grab my freehand tool and draw a straight path down. We'll make it about so long. Let's page move up so we can grab the end of the polygon here and say paths, make poly a path. Now we want it to begin at 120, which was 0.566. The delay in is the beginning point, so we'll do it just like we did on the delay out. And the delay out, of course, being set here at 1.0 is fine, just what we want. Movement status on, and we won't do any rotations. Although we could go ahead and have the ship bank as it left us and several other things. What we want to do now is select that original path that we made and assign it to this path. I'm going to go ahead and leave tracker mode now. It's still on, so we're still tracking that attach point. Center up, go to isometric, flat view in the Y, and I'll be able to then rotate a little bit. Select this path and say path, assign a path, and select the original path we had. Now during the animation, let's go ahead and rotate so we're looking from the back side here. You'll notice I'm not using a camera yet, and we could actually render this entire animation just using the virtual camera that exists. But we'll use one because it's easier to get a dramatic effect using the 3D clipping available with the real camera. I went to quick mode, and we can see now that we're descending the path, and we're just about at the bottom. We've hit the bottom, frame 120 hits, and we didn't move. I'm not quite sure why. I must not have assigned it properly. Let's select this path and tell it that it should be assigned to this path, and that's why. We have to select this path and assign it to this path. That's why. So we're going to go ahead and preview this one more time and make sure that we've got it here. Okay, looks real good. Looks real good, except the movement on the second path here is very smooth. I'm going to select it and say alter a path, and I want it to begin slowly and then accelerate into this. So a 1 is on the ease in is a positive number, and it's going to enter it slowly. And a negative 1 on the other path is a negative number, which means that it will finish very quickly. And during the preview here, you'll be able to see that come into play. So it starts a little easier and accelerates along the path, which is what we want. Okay, we won't really know about how far we want it to go until we have the camera in place, so let's take care of that now. I'm going to go ahead and set my attach point at this point here. I want the camera to look at that point during the animation. And say camera, and just accept and add one. The camera is created up here, and these the ship's polygons are in the way here, so I'm going to go ahead and select them and hide them so I can grab the camera easily. And move it down. Now we're looking from a different angle here, so I'm just going to move it out. Looking down from the Z here, and finding the camera, let's move it back. We want to set it somewhere near the gas container. Now, a camera cannot enter a gas container, but we can have it very close. Looking from the Y, I want to select the camera and move it down so that it's going to be looking somewhat at the target during the animation. And as a last thing I want to do here, selecting this path and altering it, I think I'm going to have the ship rotate as it comes down. So we'll use a beginning of maybe 50 degrees and have it rotate to 0. And we want that to finish up at 120 frames, so we can go ahead and use what I've set up here to illustrate keyframing. And we're in good shape. Let's go ahead and have an ease out of 1 on that so that it settles into it nicely. Going into quick mode, and we can see that the ship is coming down here and settling in front of us and going to take off. And I don't like my camera position much at all, so I'm going to move it up like so. And let's take another look at that. What I want to do is I want to make sure we're looking down at the ship when it takes off. And that looks fine. Okay. And I think that it leaves us very nicely there. I'm not quite satisfied with the placement of it, so let's go ahead and try it one more time. Moving it up a little bit, looking at the Z, and let's move it over here a little bit so that we can look in a little bit more of an angle. Let's try that. Okay, the front of the ship is obvious as it begins to rotate there, and we can't quite see the front there, which is what I'd like to be able to do, so I'm going to go back to the Y and move the camera even higher. Looking down from the Z to make sure that I haven't entered the gas, okay, and we'll try it one more time. That looks pretty good. I would like the spaceship to be just going away from us near the middle of the screen. In order to accomplish that, I can simply select the target and move it up. So I'm going to move in here so that I can grab a hold of the side of the target and just move it up here a little bit, just like that. The camera then, of course, is going to be looking over the top of where the ship is flying. So we're taking a look here. And that looks like that's going to be much better, much more what I had in mind. Okay, if we hide the camera, we can see what's moving along the path. I notice that something's not assigned to the path, so we're going to hide the camera. Using the F9 key, we can then see what's happening. And it looks like the cowling was not assigned to the path, so we'll go ahead and select it and make sure that it's also assigned to the path. Okay. And we want it assigned to the first path, which is not there, it's right here. Let's go ahead and flat view in the Y. And I had moved that, that's right. So let's go to the X where we can see it a little bit better. Select this and say paths, assign a path, and choose this path. Now during the animation, we should be in good shape. Everything will move properly. Yes, everything's assigned. Okay, we're all ready to go except for the attribute lists. The attribute lists for the main ship and so on are fine. What we want to do is we want to make sure that the gas is going to turn on at the proper time. Now I've already given it an attribute list. We'll go to Control, Member Control. Gases take far longer to render than regular polygons, so since this gas doesn't become effective until frame 120, I want to go ahead and add a level here and even them out. As a matter of fact, this I want to exit at frame, let's say 110. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the show flag off. Now this means that whatever polygons are using this attribute list will not participate in the render during this member's time. So this gas won't appear until frame 110. At frame 110 I'll go ahead and have the gas turn on, and we'll go ahead and use the original blue color, just like so. And so the attribute list will, in other words, keep this gas turned off, not even visible, not participating, so it won't delay our render until frame 110 when it will appear. Now we want to go ahead and alter the gas, and we're going to add a level. We're going to add 2 levels and even them out. The first part of this has nothing to do with what's going to happen because the gas is going to be not participating during that time. So let's have it exit at frame 110. On the second member, we'll have an entry of frame 110 and have it exit at frame 120. Sorry, frame 120. Now, on this level, we want the entry strength to be 1 and the exit to be 10. That will mean that the gas will be invisible here, come in at a strength of 1 suddenly, grow to 10 over a period of 10 frames, and then the final segment, which we want to begin at frame 120, will take over and it'll sustain this power of 10, the strength of 10, till the end of the animation. Okay, I think we're all ready to go. We'll go ahead and render this and show you what happens. I'm going to do an example of a ball bouncing through an environment. Let's go ahead and make the environment first. I'm going to flat view in the z-axis here and ask for a rectangle. We'll make it about 40 or 50,000 by 50,000 in the XY plane, which is the plane we're looking directly down into, and we'll make it about a 6 by 6 grid. So we've got our plane. Let's back off a little bit so we can see it. And I'm using my 9 key to rotate back a little bit, 1 key to rotate. You can see how the plane's oriented there, lying flat in the XY plane. All right, let's put some, well, we could put all sorts of things on this, mountains or, well, we could even load in a landscape from Scenery Animator or something, but let's go ahead and just take a simple approach and use the rectangle tool, and we'll make a standard solid cube. Let's go ahead and just turn the grid off here, like so. And that will make us a simple cube here in the center. If we look from the y-axis, you'll see that it's centered, and that'll be fine. I think I'm going to go ahead and look down from the Z and resize this. I'm using the left mouse button click on the resize tool, holding down the Alt, which will resize in the 2 dimensions that are active. That's the XY. So the Z, or the the Z dimension is not being changed. If we look back from the Y, you see I've made this taller looking by shrinking these 2 dimensions. Let's make it a little bit smaller than that, about like so. Okay, and we'll move it off here a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and get my clone defaults up and set it for about 5,000 on the x-axis here. And select this object and clone it about 4 times, which makes a total of 5. Let's go back to the Z here. We'll select this one, and I'm using the left mouse button on the resize tool. I'm not holding down any key, so it only resizes in 1 dimension. Using this as a straight edge to shrink this down like so. I'll take this one and make it a slightly different size. This one here we might make a little bit larger like so. And these 2 I could probably leave alone, but we'll just for the sake of variety resize them a little bit. Let's go back to the Z-axis and make this one a little bit smaller. Now I'm using my Alt key to do 2 dimensions at once. And let's take this one and make it a little bit smaller too, like so. So we've got kind of a random assortment of cubes here. I'm going to go back to the Y-axis, open my manual tool, and select here. This is the 0, at Z equals 0, where that ground plane is lying. So I'm going to select this, change this to 0, and say Move Poly. And do the same thing for each one of these here. move poly, and that flattens them out with the ground plane just like this. Selecting this, changing it to 0 and saying move poly, and continuing through. Could just leave them set so that they stick down below the ground plane, but doesn't seem to be much point to that. Okay, and we're done with that. I'm going to look back from the Z here and get my clone defaults up here again and set them for maybe a Y of 5,000. Whoops, like so. And select each one of these objects here, holding down my Shift key to be able to select more than one. And I'm going to clone them. That's 10, 15, 20. We'll use about 25 of these objects, which is quite a cluster here. And now I'm going to position them. So I'm going to go to isometric mode, and using my cursor up key to zoom out a little bit, I'm just going to randomly place these things around. Now I've selected that. I'm using my Alt key to move it. I'm selecting this one and moving it around a little bit. We'll move this one over here and put this one down here. What I have in mind is I'm going to make a ball bounce along here, and making a sort of a channel for it to walk or to move through. We'll also move our camera, and we'll follow that ball with the camera as it goes. So let's just surround some of this area with these cubical containers that we've made, just like so. And I'll go ahead and finish positioning these here and be right back. Okay, I've finished positioning these, and I'm pretty happy with this. I'm using the 9 key to rotate. We're still in isometric mode, so everything will look rather squarish. So we'll go back into perspective mode. I'm using the cursor down key to zoom in a little bit, and the 1 key to rotate around the Z to take a look. And that looks like a pretty good placement. Using the 3 key to rotate the other direction, 9 key to go, or the 9 key to go backwards a little. That looks pretty good. Let's flat view in the Z here and think about this. I'm going to go back to isometric mode, cursor up to zoom out a little bit. I want the path to run right around here. I'm going to use a circular path for this, one that, well, we don't have to. We could go ahead and we could make the path freehand. So why don't we do that? We'll start it right up here. And I'm getting the freehand tool here, and I'm going to begin to draw the path. Now I'm going to use the tab key to deposit points wherever I want the ball to go. And I'll take a little bit of time with this and make it a fairly smooth cornered path, although it's not really terribly necessary. There are several other things we could do to make this a more regular path. For instance, we might want to go into Professional Draw or one of the other drawing programs and use a B-spline from there and import it as a PostScript file. We could even save out a wireframe image of this as a bitmap and bring it into one of those programs and use it as a trace template. All sorts of things are possible. We could even use some of the more specialized tools here to alter an arc and make a rather regular path for this in Aladdin. But this looks like this might do a pretty good job for us here. I'm going to alter this position here a little bit, just bring these out a little bit and bring it around like so. That looks pretty good, just like that. Okay. And, you know, of course, we could have brought the ball in here and had it bounce as it goes around and bring it up into here and all kinds of things, but this will do fine. So we'll take this and we'll say to make this poly a path. Now we want to turn on the movement in the last, make the velocity constant, and we're going to use an align, reverse with the last on, and tell it to work around the Z-axis on this. That will cause the ball to turn the corners as it goes, which will be quite nice. Okay, and let's go ahead and do the ball here. I'm going to jump up into a new space, and we'll work here. I'm flat viewing in the y-axis. I'm going to say make an arc, and we'll use a 180-degree arc in about 16 segments here. And we'll go ahead and select make the attach point one of these two positions. This is the last segment running down here. Select the Z for the sweep and ask for about 32. Often it's a good idea to use twice as many segments in the sweep as you used in your arc. And turn off the connect last, of course, because this is not going to be a solid form. Accept that and do our sweep here. And now we're going to be getting fairly close to this, so I'm going to select this and ask for it to be all triangles so that we don't have any problems with non-planar polygons. Okay, we're in good shape. I'll go ahead and shade this, Phong shading. And of course, it's better to do our shading, find our adjacent assigns, and so on at the time you're in the editor than it is to do it in between each frame, the way some programs may want to do it. So now we've got our ball here. I don't know whether this will be a proper size or not, so let's go ahead and select it and jump it down into our space 1. We'll go back to space 1 and take a look, and of course it's quite large, looks like. So I'm going to resize it, getting the left mouse button here. Holding down the shift will resize it in all axes at once. And let's select it here so that we can see it resizing. There we go. Okay, and so it looks like that's about the size that I want the ball to be right there. It looks like we'll be able to make all the corners that way and have a nice tight fit in some of them. And so this is the first point on the path over here. Let's select the path and ask to move it to first so I can select it on all its points. I'm setting the attach point there. I'm going to go to the y-axis here. Select this, choose the Y, flat view in the Y, and go ahead holding down my Alt key and move that path up. Looks like that's about halfway up right there. Going to go ahead and use the 7 key to rotate down a little bit. Choosing this point to make the attach point, selecting the ball, and using a right mouse button click on the center gadget will center it up to that point. Looking down from the Z, you can see that we've centered it there. From the Y, you can see that we've centered it there. And I might want to go ahead and come in and just take the time to select the ball and the path at the same time, using the Alt key and this side as a straight edge, just pulling them up until it just hits there. So we're in good shape there. Now if I select the ball and use a right mouse button click here on the page move gadget, it'll set the attach point at the ball's center. I'm going to pull the view down here with a page move, get the freehand tool, and draw a line straight up like this from the center of the ball. Now this will be the path that will make the ball bounce. So we'll say to make this poly a path, we'll want to turn on the movement and the last, and ease in and ease out to bounce will be a negative. We'll use a negative 1.5 on each one of these, which in my experience is a pretty good number to use. And so negative 1.5, and the number of cycles here, we'll have it bounce maybe 20 times during the animation. And we also want to have the ball rotate. We'll have it rotate around the x-axis, maybe with an exit of 360, and ask for 20 to match the number of times that we're going to bounce. And so we'll accept that. I'm going to take this ball here and say that it should look at this path during the animation. And before I assign it to the other ones, I'm going to hit my Q key and the F9. Well, let's set our number of frames here. Let's preview the animation at, well, we'll make this a nice long one. Let's say 720 frames. So we begin. And yeah, that is a nice bouncing motion there. Using the 7 key to rotate down a little bit, the 1 key to rotate, you can see what's happening here. Now the reason I have it rotating around the X is because this align is going to initialize, take over this ball and rotate it 90 degrees at this point, as you'll see. So let's get back out of here and let's do that path assignment and see what happens here. We'll take this path, the ball of course is assigned to it, and we'll assign it to this path. Now during the animation we should see it bouncing around. There it goes, and looks like that's a pretty nice move. And of course as it turns the corner, the ball is going to continue to bounce in the right direction here. And so it looks like we're in real good shape. We'll be able to see that a lot better if we can track around it using a camera. That'd be kind of nice to look down from the Z here, and I'm using the period key or the greater thans to change the number of polygons that are painting during quick mode, getting it smaller here, hitting the F9 key, and you can see that the ball is bouncing, rolling, and as it turns the corner, that roll is going to go ahead and continue to track just the way we want it to. The second path is controlling that with the align. And so it'll continue to do that, and we could make that path go anywhere we want, and it would track well. So let's go back out of quick mode here. We're almost ready. Well, let's go ahead and think about a camera. I've flat viewed in the Z-axis here. I'm going to center the view and zoom out with the cursor up key just once. And let's have the camera start right about in the center here. It might be a little tricky going through here, but could be fun too. And we'll draw a path for the camera. I'm going to have him just come right in here like this, and maybe we'll have him by this time in the path. He ought to be somewhat behind the ball, so we'll have him track the ball a little bit here, just like so. And at this point it might be kind of nice to have him do something a little bit different than the ball does. We'll want to go back and smooth that corner out a little bit. I'm not sure how tall this cube is here, but we'll make sure that we go over the top of it. And let's go around this one. Again, not sure how tall it is. Come back in through these cubes here. And we'll have to make sure that the camera sits above those cubes, that's all. Now, I'm not quite smooth enough here, so I'm going to add a point with the right mouse button click here and just smooth that out just a little bit. Same thing here. This is a little bit too ragged of an angle, and if I wanted to, I could really take some time and make these really nice. But we'll settle for this for right now. You'll be able to see some alignment as the camera moves along these two straight segments, and we'll just smooth those out just a little bit like that. Okay, this particular polygon here, we'll ask to make it a path, and we'll turn on movement and last segment and constant on that. We'll accept it. The first point, if you remember right, it was at the center here. So we're going to take this path, select the y-axis, and go ahead and move it up. Now we want it to be above the containers, just like so. And that way we'll never enter them. Of course we could enter them, but at that point you'd only see what was inside those containers, and you'd lose the view of what was going on outside. So what we've done here is I've raised it up so that the ball will come up and be just a little bit above the camera or eye level while the animation is running. So that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and move this to first so that it's easy to select that center point. Go back to the Z. I'm selecting that, let's see, let's go ahead and select this path over here. And when I say to make the camera, the target will appear at that point. So we'll say camera, we'll go ahead and accept it at its defaults, and the target has appeared there. Of course, this ball, which I'm going to hide, and kind of rotate using the 9 key so I can see this path, which I'm going to hide, they were created before this target. So I'll be able to select the target now, and I'm going to ask to move it to first so it's easy to select. Now we'll select it, and we'll tell it to look at this path during the animation. That's the one that the ball's bouncing on. And then the other path here, I'm going to flat view so I can see which point is in the center. This point in the center is point 0 because that's the first point that I made. And I'm going to, I made that the attach point. I'm going to jump the camera to it. I'm going to select the camera then and tell it that during the animation it should be looking at this path. So we'll show all here, go into quick mode, and preview this, and find out if we're going to run into the ball at any point, which we want to avoid. And it looks like we are looking down too much, so I may go ahead and raise the target and the ball's path. Since it's a translating path, we won't need to change the height of the ball to do that. Or we can just go ahead and raise the target. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to back off here, go back to out of quick mode here, select the target, flat view in the Y so I can see how high I'm getting it, and bring it up to about here like so. Now it will still track in the right direction for that path. Let's come in a little bit so we can see a little better. And quick mode and hitting the F9 key again, and that looks a lot better. That'll keep that ball in view while it's running. You can see the target is sitting quite a bit higher than the ball now, and that looks real good. I'm going to go out of quick mode so we can get an idea of the environment here. You know, it looks real nice. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the editor here, and I'm going to ask to preview this animation with the save on, 720 frames, and begin. And it will begin to record this. So it looks like it's going to take about 11 or 12 minutes to do this. So I'm going to pause, and when it's done, we'll come back. Okay, the animation is finished. I'm going back to Workbench here, and Directory Opus I keep on my Workbench. Goes to RAM, and you can see that even at 720 frames here, this animation is almost 2.5 megabytes. I'm going to use Display to take a look at it, and as it comes up here, you'll see that I'm running it at 30 frames a second. So this is actually the time it will be on the tape, and you'll see that at one position on the path here, I got very close to the ball, much closer than I intended. You can see it right coming up right about here. Now this is the left side when we were looking down, and I'm actually inside the ball at that point, which was not what I intended. It occurs to me it might be kind of fun to do that on purpose and put something inside the ball that we can look at when it goes in, but for this animation, there's several ways we can take care of it. I'm hitting my escape key to get out of Display. Display, by the way, is public domain and is quite nice. I'm going to head and quit Directory Opus, go back to the program here, and this is the path that the camera is running around on. This is the area here. If I go to the flat view in the Z, you can see this is the area where it's getting much too close. So I can either alter this if I want to, or I can have the camera start at a different position on the path. Let's do that instead. We'll say alter the path, and we'll have it start percent here. What we can do is change it so that it reaches that point later, so that the or earlier, so that the ball has already passed. So I can change it, for instance, to a 0.9 here, and accept it. If I go ahead and go into quick mode, and we'll ask to preview the animation again, this time we won't record it. And 720, the great thing about time slicing is we can change this with no problem. I'll ask to see it at 120 frames, and we'll begin here. And you'll be able to see that I can get a very quick feedback on where it's going to be, how close I am to the ball when I get over into that corner, which is coming up right here. And looks like that took care of it very nicely. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll accept that then, and we'll think about textures here. Going back out of quick mode here, I've already laid out the textures and have the bitmaps preloaded that I'm going to use to save some time. So we'll select the grid here, and for attributes, we'll go ahead and select one I've named ground, which I've already made up. We'll take a look at it here. It's going to be solid white, default reflectivity, and the hardness and so on won't matter because I'm not going to shade this at all. We'll just use it as it is. So we'll accept that for its attributes, and then for its texture list, I've got one I've prepared called ground here, and you can see that I've loaded a 16 million color bitmap, 640 by 400 bitmap called marble.24. It's actually a noise texture that I rendered in Aladdin and then saved out as a 24-bit file to use just for this purpose here. We're using it at full strength and color. It won't change over the animation. The full bitmap is being used, and its projection from the Z. So we'll accept that, and the program will go ahead and map that. Now for the ball, we'll go ahead and set its attributes, and I've got one selected here called ball. And as you can see, I've made it kind of a gold color, which won't really matter because we're going to use full-strength texture. Fully hard, at default highlight size, fully reflective, and so we'll accept that. And then for textures, what I'm going to do right now is set the attach point at the center of that ball, just like that. And now when I select it and say textures, the one that I have called ball is going to be a procedural texture, a helix. We could have used, any of the procedural textures that we have defined and alter them and so on. But helix is the one I want to use for it. We'll accept that. We have it set for z-axis. Helix is a wrapping texture, so the projection really doesn't matter. We're using a burst of 5, which means the color pattern will be repeated 5 times around the ball. A twist of 1, which is how much twist will happen in the helix, over the distance of 10,000, which is actually much larger than this ball. We've shrunk it down to somewhere around 5,000, so we'll just use that. That'll be quite nice. And I want to use the current attach point for the procedural center. Procedural colors, I'm asking for 4 colors here, and we might want to go ahead and, well, we'll leave that. I've got them red, white, blue, white, red, and green even over time with just a default blend. We could go ahead, of course, and blend these totally, but we'll leave it like it is here, and we'll accept that, and it'll go ahead and wrap the ball. And so we've got our textures on our ground plane and our ball, so I'm going to select the ground plane here and the ball and hide them, take the 2 paths here and the camera and its target and hide those. That leaves us with just these left. So right mouse button, click on the area select gadget, will select all of them for us. And I'm going to say attributes, and I've got one set named boxes, which again, we're not going to shade these, so it's fully reflective and full white. And for the texture list for these ones, I've got one called boxes here. What it is the rocky texture that was sent to me by Shams from Vermont, and I'm setting it on at a free angle, 30 and minus 30, full strength, no changes over the animation, and full size. So we'll accept that. I've also got anti-aliasing on for this because we'll get quite close to it, so I don't want to see any pixels. So that's all we need to do except for take a look at maybe a couple of frames. Render options, we'll go ahead and use an opal low-res screen here, just to take a look and render the first frame. And so it looks like we're going to do pretty well here. Yeah, that looks quite nice. The ground plane there with the marble texture is just a subtle hint. The dark background ought to look quite nice. We could change its color a little bit if we wanted to. The stone texture looks very nice on these. These are actually individual pixels here that you're seeing. That give you an idea of how much this is blown up, but the anti-aliasing does a wonderful job on it. And under lights, I have the global lights at their default settings. If I use those, the lights will actually track along with the camera as though they're mounted on either side of the camera. And we'll go ahead and we'll do that. That will change the lighting as we go through the scene. And so we'll go ahead and render this animation and show it to you when it's finished. Let's do an example that shows the wave sources in use. We're going to do an insect of some kind, some sort of simple 3D insect because of time constraints here, and we'll have him bounce into a pool of water. Let's flat view. We're going to ask for a rectangle. We're going to ask for one in the XY plane at about 60,000 units, and no Z dimension at all. We'll ask for about an 8 by 8 grid. And accept it. If I use the 7 key to rotate, you can see that our grid's sitting there just like so. This will be the water surface. I also want to put a wall around it, so let's flat view in the Z. Multiple select tool with the left mouse button. I'm selecting this area and grouping them. And we'll go ahead and hide those. I'm selecting the ring that's left and grouping it separately. Now if I go ahead and flat view, I'll show all. Let's rotate back here a little bit. I'm going to select this, get my extrude defaults, and negative Z is up in the program, so we'll ask for about negative 5,000 on that 100% and 1, and we'll accept that and extrude that. This will be the outside wall. The water will be this position, this surface here on the inside, and this will be our brick wall or stone wall of some kind. Let's hide the water. We don't need these bottom polygons on this wall at all, so let's flat view, go isometric. Use our area select tool to grab those, and if we rotate, you can see I've only selected the bottom polygons in that wall. We'll delete those. Okay, and showing all. And we have, let's get back out of isometric, we have our wall and our water surface here, just like we wanted. We can go ahead for waves that require shading, Phong type shading, so we'll go ahead and shade the water surface like so. We might as well, while we're at it, add an attribute list for it. We'll name it water. And on the member control, we'll ask for a relatively medium blue, let's say, about like so. Very reflective, very hard, and a very high highlight size. That'll help the wave sources to sparkle some highlights across there. And we use the match so it doesn't change over time. The wall itself, we'll go ahead and select these. Well, we better go ahead and shade them. We'll shade the top separately, and we'll ask for Phong shading on it. And on the bottom, we'll go ahead and shade that. And actually, we don't want any assign adjacents on, otherwise it'll try to round these corners. So we'll turn off the assign adjacent and accept that. And now let's go ahead and group these two. And what we'll do is we'll use, for attributes, we can go ahead and add one and call it wall here. Really, it's okay just to use a default one. I just like to have one so that I know what it is. If we took a look at it, we've just left it at the defaults here. And so we'll accept that. As a matter of fact, we want to make sure that these are not going to be sensitive to waves. Okay, just like so. And we'll want to go ahead and texture this wall. So for textures, let's add one. And we'll go ahead and use a bitmap. We'll load one here from my Aladdin textures drawer. I've got one here called Rocky that I use quite a bit. And so we'll use it. We'll ask for suggested. And we'll leave the default color and strength. We'll ask for free angle type. And put in an angle that's going to show some of the textures of the wall without streaking along their sides, in other words. Everything is evened, so we'll accept that. It'll map that. And if we go ahead and rotate a little bit here and take a look at this, let's, under render options, turn on light fill, textures, Phong, and for a screen we'll go ahead and use a very low resolution opal screen just for some quick renders here. And so we have a stone wall with a water surface, and that's going to be very nice. We'll go ahead and use this. So let's go back to the editor here, and we have our pool set up. Now what we need to do is figure out how we're going to have the insect bounce in. So let's go ahead and flat view in the Z here, ask for an arc of 360 degrees and let's say 5 segments. And that'll give us a pentagon here in the center. We'll resize this about like so. Now what this is going to be is the direction that the insect's going to fly. He's going to come in and bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce and then fly away again. So that's what we're going to use it for. So let's go ahead and grab that and go ahead and create a new space. That jumped this polygon up into the new space. If I flat view in the y-axis and rotate using the 7 key and come in a little bit, when he bounces here, I'm going to select that point to begin to draw a freehand poly here. We'll go ahead and come up. Doesn't need to be very many points, maybe about 5 points or so for him to make his little arc as he bounces across here. Just like so. These don't have to be even. And the last point, of course, should be there. So I've made the attach point here, selected that point, and I'm snapping it down. Okay, this polygon here is going to be the bug's path. Okay, and we want it to be the same on all 5 sides. So let me rotate a little bit more. I'm setting the attach point at the origin with the right mouse button, click here. Just choosing the Z-axis as the axis of rotation, and asking for solid off with 5 segments on this. Selecting this polygon and rotating him, and we'll pop up with our 5 segments like so. Now they don't exactly match here, so we have to jump them over. Let's ungroup them here. Attach point here, selecting this and using the F2 key or the right mouse button on this, we'll jump that over. Let's do that all the way around using my F2 key to bounce these over. And the last one here. Okay, what we need to do is we need to alter this path. So let's select it again. Let's take a look at it a little bit. If we want it to be the path, this is point 0 up here. This point over here is point 1. So that means that this rotates in this direction. I want it to go this way. So I'll select it, and I'll say reverse points. Okay, now as I choose these, I'm going to stack up points on one end here and then snap them into position along here. So if I selected this point, and by using my right mouse button, click here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I've added 5 points to that position. Now by selecting this position here, clicking on that point and using my F1 key, I can jump those points up just like that. So we'll work our way around this thing just like this. Okay, that segment is done. If I were to show it alone, you would see that, but we'll go ahead and finish this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we want to jump the first one here. Choose this, and the second one jumps up there. The snap tool in Aladdin is an absolutely wonderful tool for doing freehand type modifications like this. This point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and go ahead and select this point and jump him over, just like so. And I'll come back when I've finished the other 2 segments. Okay, I've finished the other 2 segments. If I select this, you can see that our path goes like so. Let's hide that for right now. These are our polys that we used for the templates. We don't need them anymore, so we'll delete them. Let's show all. And this is our path. Now the only thing is, the bug will bounce along here, but we need to add some points here. So I'm using my tab key to enter freehand mode. And I'm going to back out a little bit. Using my tab key, I'm going to, I'm in the wrong axis here. So let's go ahead and set that. Now delete this point. Okay, choosing the Y. This is the point that I want to begin to add points at. Using my tab key, I've entered freehand mode, and I'm going to draw some line segments out like so. That'll be his exit path, and as he comes in, we need to go ahead and draw some more, so I'm going to go ahead and draw sort of a mirror image of that on this other side here. And we don't have to be too critical about this. This last point I want snapped down to here. I'm using the left mouse button click to do that. So that's the path that we'll be using. We might as well go ahead and say make poly a path. We'll turn on the movement status. That last long bar across the top we won't use. That's the last segment. We want constant velocity. And we'll use an align on this. Again, we won't use the last segment. We want it to control the rotation around the Z with the align. So now we have our path ready. If we select it and go down and move selected and jump back into space 1 here, this is our path. I'm using the 9 key to rotate our view a little bit so we can see a little better. And from here I'm going to draw a triangle real quickly so that we can see just what this path is doing. We'll go ahead and assign this to the path we just drew and ask to preview the animation at about 8 seconds. And that ought to be pretty good with the accuracy on. And you can see here that our first point is wrong. On the path, if we were to use the freehand tool, we'd see that that current point is 10. We want it to be the first point of the path. So we'll select it and say, choose a first point, and choose that one. Now during the animation, you'll be able to see that it's going to control whatever we draw for an insect here. It'll come in, it'll do its 5 bounces right on the tips, just like we want. And then following on around here, and then it'll fly away. Looks pretty good. Looks like it's going to be real good. So let's go ahead and see what we can do about the wave sources. Now, as this object moves in here, the time that it hits here is when we want the wave source to occur. Okay, so we can go ahead and we'll come back here and we'll mark down the times that it's hitting that, or the frame numbers in particular. But first we want to think about the wave sources. We'll need 5 wave sources. Actually, there'll be 6 waves. As the bug comes in, he'll hit once, twice, 3, 4, 5, and then he'll hit here again for 6. We'll go ahead and, when I make this my attach point, the first wave will be created there. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see it appear. And I'll say polygon wave add, and we'll ask for maybe 3 waves per source. The amplitude of 1 ought to be fine. Frequency at default will be fine. On the phase, if we ask for a negative number, it will go outward from the center of the wave. So we'll use a phase shift of about 10. This is actually how the ripples run along. And for the entry, we'll use a very small wave, and for the exit, a larger one. The minimum range has to be different from the maximum range, so we use just a range of 1 here, and on this we'll go ahead and use 20. Now what this is this is 2 circles. The maximum range is the outer diameter of 500, and the inner diameter of 499 means there's only a 1 unit difference here, and a bell curve will be applied across that difference. So the wave will start 500 units away from the surface with a bell curve, in other words, a range of the wave of just 1 unit. It'll be a circle, but it'll only be 1 unit wide. And at the end of at the exit value, when the wave is finished, it'll be 50,000 on the outside and 20,000 on the inside. So we'll be able to see it, and there'll be a nice bell curve distribution across that 30,000 unit range. Okay, so we'll accept that, and our wave will appear there. You can see it right there. We'll need 5 of those, so I'll clone it 4 times, and putting my attach point over here and selecting the wave and using the right mouse button click here will center it up to that position. We'll go ahead and move the other ones along just like that, just like so. Attach point over here, select the wave source, right mouse button click will move it, and again over here. Okay, we have our 5 waves ready. We need to think about when it's going to hit here. So I'm hitting my F9 key to re-enter preview here, and I've got a pencil with me. As that polygon comes in, I'm going to hit my right mouse button right there. Now when I release, you'll see the frame number read out over here. And what I'm going to do is read it very quickly. And so we had it at 50. I've got a pencil and paper with me, and I'm writing down 50. If I can write down 50, I've got to use my other hand. Okay. Alright, I've written down 50. Now I'm releasing my right mouse button and hitting it here, and when I release quickly, I see the number 80. So I'm writing down 80. Releasing again, when it reaches over here, I've hit my right mouse button just a little late. When I let go, it said 110, so I'll write down about 107. Okay, and I'm letting go again. Waiting until it gets over here, hitting my right mouse button, letting go, and it read out about 137. Writing down 137. Letting go, watching it come over, and hits, and letting go, and that read about 164, 165. The times on these are not critical, as you'll see. And looking here, and I got about 192 out of that one. So these are the frame numbers. Now, a keyframing system, you would be required to know those frame numbers exactly. For the type of system Aladdin employs, it's really great. First, let's go ahead and select this one. And let's say wave alter. Now, this one has two wave sources, as you know, one early and one later. So we're going to say add and even. The last wave source, see, you can select these members here. I'm going to select the second one here. And it had an entry value of the last frame number we wrote down, which was 192. So I'll put that in. As you can see, that time percentage is 7958, about 80%. So there's about a 20% left before the end of the animation. We'll let that go ahead and run to the end and fade out at the end. And since we want all the other waves to have the same duration, we'll use 20% on all of them. So we'll select this member. It hit at frame 50, so we'll use the frame number to establish our first percentage. And then we'll go ahead and add. As you know, if I select this, we had a 20% gap here. So 0.2 plus 20 is 0.4. So that'll be the range. Now these waves will run the same, and that'll work out real well for us on all these. So we'll accept that. I'll illustrate that by doing the second one here. And I use the keyboard shortcut Alt-W. It entered at frame 80, so we'll put in an 80 here. That gives us our start value. Now on our exit, we want to go from 0.32, and we want to add the 20%, so that'll be 0.52, just like so. And that'll be our second wave. That's when it begins and when it ends. And we'll accept that. I'll go ahead and do the others, and then we'll get back to it. Okay, I've finished setting up the times for the other waves here. As you can see, for instance, if I select this and say Alt-W, I've set a time here, a frame entry of 164, which we caught in the preview, and that came out to 0.67 of time. I added my 20%, and this is the time range, and similarly for the other ones. So let's back off a little bit, and let's take a quick look here and make sure our waves are happening when we want. I'm going to say render, hit my escape key right away, and ask it to redraw frame. The second wave began at frame 80, the third at frame 107, so let's ask for about frame 110. And but the first wave ought to be nearly finished at this point, perhaps completely done. The second wave is there. And one of the things that I'm noticing here is my lighting is very wrong for the waves. It's not good. We'll go ahead and we'll get rid of our global lights. We'll leave a little bit of ambient. And let's go back to the editor and add a light source if we're going to be looking at these. We'll put it out here near the corner here. I put my attach point there because when I say light add, we'll leave the defaults in place here. That's where the light will occur. Use the y-axis here to bring it up in space a little bit. Look down from the Z and back off here. And we'll move it back like so. Okay, our light direction then will come in this direction. And let's come back in on the drawing a little bit, rotate a little bit, and take a little better look here. I'll hit my escape key to stop it right away and say redraw frame, and again we'll go about frame 110. As it comes down here now, we'll see that the triangle, which simulates the bug we're going to use, has moved along the path, of course. And the first wave source looks like has almost completely gone. The second wave source is nearing its end, and the third wave source where the bug is hit and just leaving is just starting to come out. So you can see the circle here. When the bug hit at first, it was very tiny, about 500 units in a circle, but only one unit along this dimension here. Here we're very near the end, so this is about 50,000. This is about 20,000. You can see our bell curve has strengthened the waves at the center of that curve and then decrease them as it goes, so the ring will expand. Looks very nice. Redrawing another frame, let's say frame 167 or 8 or so. We better not try that. And you'll see that the bug has moved on a little bit further, and the waves have changed accordingly. So it looks like he's just finished making another puddle there, another wave, and the one just behind him has grown and is almost ready to disappear. So let's go ahead and one thing I noticed here, and let's go back to the editor, is my wave sources are not tapering in strength. So if I ask for an alter of this wave, the amplitude is going from 1 to 1, so it's never decreasing. It'll just suddenly disappear. We want that to be 0, and so let's accept that. I'll go ahead and do the other 5 and be right back. Okay, I've set the end strength to all the waves for 0. During the animation, it might be nice to have the water ripple regardless of the impact of the insect. So let's add a couple of wave sources. Let's go to the z-axis here in flat view. I'm going to go ahead and put an attach point there to draw a line out into space. This, all I did is move the attach point with that, so we'll delete it. Okay, and that's the attach point. That's where the wave will occur. And we'll say wave add, and we'll go ahead and just use one wave source like that with an amplitude of, let's say, 0.5, which will be half of the main one's. Frequency will be fine. The phase shift, again, we'll want to have it move over time. So let's use about 0 to a -5 or so. And on our range, we'll want to use a large range on this one because it's going to, and again, using a negative inverse of this will mean that the small end of the bell curve is clear on the other end. This will give us a spherical wave source. So we'll accept that like that, and that'll give us one. We'll go ahead and grab him and clone him and move it over into a slightly different position like so. And that way we'll have circular waves coming off of this wave source and circular waves coming off this wave source, and we'll have a nice interference pattern occurring on the surface. All right, so we're ready to go except for the insect that we want to fly along here. Let's go ahead and build him. We'll go ahead and make a new space to create the insect. Let's go to the Z and flat view. I think we'll go ahead and draw his body first. I'm going to make a very simple insect because of the amount of time we have. So I'm using the freehand tool, using my tab key to deposit points here. And we're making the abdomen of the little bug, a neck, and a head, just like so. And of course we'll use the sweep tool to finish this. So I want to make sure the last point did get to an x of 0, and yes it did. It's important, of course, to have these both with the same x. I'm going to rotate this around the y, making that the attach point, selecting the y-axis, that's the one I want to rotate around. Getting my rotate defaults up, and using 16 is probably going to be too much, but we'll go ahead and do that. Solid off, on, and connect last off. This is the last segment of this body, and we don't want any polygons to occur there. And so we'll accept and sweep this. So that's the body of our insect. Let's delete that original polygon, and let's go ahead and make some wings for him. Grabbing everything and hiding it, and I'm going to toggle my trace mode. I've prepared a small bitmap, actually a very small brush. Let's go to the drawings, the tape drawer, and I've got it called Bug Wings. This is a very small, as you can see, these are individual pixels, so this is not very large at all, probably a 100 by 50 brush. In the trace mode, I'm going to go ahead, and I'm in the wrong axis, so let's go ahead and delete that. I have the Y selected, but I'm looking down from the Z, so it was drawing in the other plane. So now we'll go ahead and draw up to the beginning here, and like so. This was only to move my attach points, so we'll delete that and begin to trace this. And this is a very, very simple drawing. We don't need to be accurate at all for this. All I need is just a rough outline of where this wing is in space. The bitmap is stretched vertically considerably from what I actually want. That's no problem. Once I've drawn this polygon, I can resize it, and when I map it, it will resize the bitmap as it applies it. Okay, so we've got this done, and we'll mirror this for the other side. So let's toggle our trace mode back off. I want to use a transparency map on this, so this can't be used in its current state. We have to face it. Transparency maps don't work with complex polys. So we'll say face begin, and what I do here is I'll select a point here, select a point here, and select a point here, and hit my F key to add a face. And we'll work our way up the thing, just like this. Okay, and let's back off a little bit because I'm having some trouble seeing it. Selecting here, here, and here, and we'll face it, and select here, here, and here, and face. And just work our way down the wing. Almost done. We'll add this last one. And it looks like we really don't even need that last one. So that's all we need. We'll go ahead and say face end. And select our original and delete it. And select these and group them. And now we'll go ahead and select them again, clone them in place, and make sure our X, which is what we want to mirror along, is, and mirror them like that, and we're in good shape. So these are our wings. If I re-show the body of the insect, of course they're much too large, so we'll grab them and resize them. We can use the freehand here to go ahead and resize them to any dimensions we want. It looks like something like this might be rather appropriate. Matter of fact, that might be still just a little bit large, so we'll bring them down a little bit even more, like so. Okay, grabbing them, moving them up into position on the body of the insect, just like that. Going to the X here, I probably got them, yeah, I do have them right in the center. Let's grab him and say move to last, so that we can grab the wings, flat view, and by holding down my shift key and selecting both of these like this, I can select the wings. I'll move them up just a little bit so that they're not quite so dead centered. Okay, looking down from the Z, we're ready then. These wings here, I want to go ahead and put on add a texture, and we'll add it. And we'll go ahead and make sure we name it here. Under member control, we'll say show bitmaps, load a new one, and of course that was the one we wanted to use, which was in our drawings tape drawer called bug.wings. And you can see here that it's only 196 by 37, so just a small brush. We'll go ahead and use it just at its default, but the type we want to be an opacity map, just like so, and suggest it on it. And we want to project down from the Z because that's the direction we're looking at. Okay, so we'll accept that. And we want to also give the wings an attribute. So we'll name this wings. And under member control, what we want to do is have some transparency here. Now the transparency map will take over from this default value. As far as reflectivity and so on go, we're in fine shape. We'll go ahead and allow the wings to be completely white, match, and we'll accept this. We won't be using foam shading on the wings because otherwise we'd get a highlight glare across there, so we'll just leave them like that. However, the bug's body, we'll go ahead and we'll shade. We'll use foam shading with the sign adjacents on because we have no real corners we don't want to map. And we'll go ahead and we're going to put the attach point at the very tip of this bug up here. Let's zoom in on him so you can see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to center the bug up to the origin. Okay, I did that with a right mouse button click on the page move, on the select all, and on the center gadget. If nothing's selected, that will move it. So we'll select him, and for a texture list for him, we're going to add one, and we better call it body. Under member control, I'm going to go ahead and use procedural bands just like that. We'll ask for the current attach point for the starting place, which is a Y of 7360. Now, since I centered at the other end of that, will be the others. So we'll use a 14,000 here on the width. And for procedural colors, we'll use, well, let's go ahead and make this a rather dark brown here, like so. And we'll spread it to the gold color, and then spread that to the black, and match. Okay, and it might be nice if we had a sort of a reddish band here, so let's add some red to this particular one right here, and match that. Before I do, I'm going to turn on my compensate and adjust the size of that red band a little bit. You can see the size here. So we're going from a brown to a yellow, through a red to a dark brown here. So let's say match so it doesn't change over time, accept it, and accept that. And it will be applied down from the Z just like we wanted it. Let's make sure of that. No, we didn't change it to the Z. Okay. So now we're ready to go ahead and animate the wings. We'll use this tip of this wing as the center of rotation. I'm going to draw a simple triangle out here, which is going to be the path, and say make poly a path. We want to rotate around the y-axis the way the bug is laying, so we use, say, 60 or 70 degrees on the rotation in a periodic fashion. And I could use my cycles. I want it to go about 40 times during the animation. I could put it here or I could put it in the global, either one. We'll use the global this time. So that's told this, we'll go ahead and assign this wing. Assign a path, and we'll choose this one. Using my 9 key to rotate back so I can look along his body, and hitting the F9, I want to see, that's the motion that I was interested in. 60 degrees, we could go a little bit more, so why don't we go ahead and we'll alter this path. I'm using the Alt-P, and we'll use maybe 80 degrees on that. Okay, and similarly, for the other wing here, we'll draw a triangle, select it, say make poly a path, and this time we'll use a -80 periodic and 40 cycles, just like on the other one. Except that, tell this wing that during the animation it should be looking at this path, and hitting the F9 key just to make sure, and we have a nice bug motion on our wings here. So our bug is finished. I'm going to jump to another group level, select all, and group him, so he's easier to grab when I get back there. And we'll go ahead and grab him then, and ask to move down to level 1. So the bug is now sitting in level 1 here, where we wanted it, and we won't need this triangle any longer, which was just a placeholder. We'll select this point on this path. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see better what I'm doing. Rotate the view a little. This is the attach point now, so when I select the bug and center him up there, he'll jump to where he is. Now, the paths themselves have to look at this path, the paths that control the wing, and the body has to look at the wing. So let's jump to a group level where they're not grouped, select the body, and say assign a path, this one, and then these two paths, we want to make sure that they look at that, and we say paths, assign a path, and this one. Now during the animation, if I hit the F9 key, you'll see that the bug, I'm going to hit the Q key for quick mode, and you'll see that he's going to follow along just like we wanted. The interview, I can go ahead and rotate our view a little bit here so we can see a little better what's happening. And it looks pretty good to me. So we'll go ahead and think about camera movement now. While the bug is moving, I want a target to track him, and I want the target to follow a path similar to this. If I use this as the path, well, let's show you here exactly what would happen. We'll go ahead and set our attach point somewhere where we can see where the target appears, and say camera, and we'll go ahead and accept it. That adds the camera. This is the target. I'm going to go ahead and select the target here and the camera, because those are the ones we're working with, and move those to first so they're easy to grab every time. This point here, I'm going to move the target up to, right mouse button click, jumped it, and the camera here, well, let's move him over here somewhere. I'm just going to select there to move it, and then we'll grab it, and using the Y, move it up off of that wall a little bit. Hitting the F9 key during the animation, you'll see that, of course, it's sitting there. We need to assign it to that path. So we'll select the target and say paths, assign a path, and use this one. I'm going to quick mode so we can see a little quicker. And you can see that as it moves, it's going to track it perfectly, but this results in a kind of a bouncing movement on the pool. No camera is going to be able to actually track it that well. So what we want to do is we want to use a path that's very similar, but doesn't have those bounces in it. And Q key to get back off. I'm going to select this, clone it, and go ahead and go up and say move selected. That new clone now sits here. This will be the path that I'm going to use for the target. So what I want to do is delete these points here, just like so. These are the extra points that we don't want. So it'll take me a few seconds to get rid of them, but it's a little easier than creating a new path. So let's get rid of this one and this one, and I'll be back when I finish deleting these. Okay, I've really simplified this path quite a lot, as you can see. So let's move it back down and jump back down to space 1 here. And our path is overlaid with this one, so we'll have to hide this one on top. I'm going to grab this path now, if I can get it anywhere, and using the Y-axis, just move it up a little bit so that the target tracks a little bit differently. And we'll go ahead and say move to first so it's easy to grab. Show all so we can see our original path. This point on this path here, if I can find it, is where we want our target to jump to, and so that's what I've done there. And now hitting the Q key and hitting the F, I still have to assign it. So let's grab our target and say paths, assign a path. It was assigned to the one the bug was on before. So we'll choose the new one now. And now you can see that as it moves along, the bug is going to bounce. However, the camera's movement will be smooth. And that's a much more acceptable image. Okay, I think we're done with this one. We can go ahead and render it and take a look at it. We'll show you when it's finished. I'm going to show you a technique that's extremely useful. It involves a trace mode. I'm going to select the Z-axis and flat view. I'm going to ask to toggle my trace mode. This will allow me to select a picture. This is a drawing that I've done in DPaint 4 of a famous Da Vinci drawing. You'll recognize it, of course. At least I hope you do. What I'm going to do is lay this drawing onto a plane in space, and then I'm going to fly the camera at will any place I want to on the drawing. We're using the trace mode, and we're going to go ahead and decide to start the camera right about here. So I'm going to draw a line out from the origin to that point, just like so. This line was only designed to move the attach point to that place, so I'm going to delete it. Now I'm going to begin to draw. I can draw freely anywhere I want, and this will be the path the camera is going to follow. This is an extremely useful technique. You'll find a great deal of fun in it, and it's very useful. You can make your path as smooth as you want. You can go in later and add or delete points if you'd like. I think I'll have the camera fly down his arm here. Letting go of the left mouse button when I'm using the trace mode allows it to go back to regular view so I can check my progress. I think I'll have the camera fly over this direction and fly up this arm. Went right past his face there. That ought to be quite interesting. Going to turn it here, just like so. Bring it in this arm. And we'll go ahead and we'll go down his body here with the camera. Just like this. This path isn't going to be terribly complex, and right here is where I'm going to stop the camera. So our path is finished. We'll go ahead and toggle our trace mode now to turn off the bitmap in the editor. This will be the path that the camera will follow, and we'll need a plane to put the drawing on. So I'm going to ask to make a rectangle. We'll go ahead and just make it 10,000 by 10,000. We're looking directly down the Z-axis into the XY plane, so we use the XY. And we'll make it about 8 by 8, which will be 64 polygons turning on the grid. We'll accept that, and our grid appears. It's grouped in two separate groups. We'll go ahead and group level 2 that we're in right now. Level 1, 3, 4, and 5 are still grouped the way it was created. And I'm going to resize this polygon, or this grid. Now, if I select this bottom corner polygon, this is the selected tile and it'll always paint. So I can see just where it is. So I want to bring it so that it just fits the screen. Now, the path was drawn relative to the screen size when the bitmap was loaded into trace mode. So if this grid just matches the screen size, just like we've done here, when we put the bitmap on the grid, it will lay exactly like we saw it in the editor. And then this path will fly along the circle, down the arm, up one arm, down the other arm, and down the body, just like we decided we'd want it to do. So now we have our grid. We can go ahead and we can think about our textures in a little bit. Now that these are in relationship to each other, we can back off and so on. If we wanted to return to this view, we would say to record this particular view. Now anytime we want to, no matter where we are, all we have to do is say restore view and we'll get right back there. So we can back off a little bit to see where we are, and let's go ahead and make this polygon our path. We'll say to make it a path, what we want to do is have the movement turned on. We want our velocity to be constant, and that's all we have to worry about. Now, this path is going to be the path for the target. We'll also need a path for the camera. I'm going to use my 9 key to rotate the view a little bit here and select this path, selecting the y-axis. I'm in the z. If I selected this and moved it, it would move flat in the xy plane. So I'll select the y so that we move in the xz plane. And I'm going to select the polygon. Holding down my alt key and using this as a straight edge, I'll move it up off of that plane slightly, just like that. Now this is, again, is where the target is going to track. We need one for the camera. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just clone this particular path. And we'll select that, and we'll move it up even higher. That means that the camera is going to be looking down. Now these two paths are traveling exactly the same time. Let's zoom in a little bit. So the target would always be directly under the camera. So we'll select this path, and we'll say to alter the path, and ask it to have a start percent of about 5%. Now that means that the path is going to start the target 5% along. The camera will be back here, so the camera will be looking slightly down as it moves along. Okay, let's go ahead and add our camera. The attach point is here, and that's where the target's going to appear, and that's fine. We'll say camera, we'll use the defaults. The target has appeared here. We'll select the target and tell it that during the animation it should be assigned to this bottom path. And then the camera, we want it to be sitting at this point, so I selected it to make it the attach point. I have to move the camera away here so I can select it easily. Make the attach point at the corner there, select the camera, and a right mouse button click here will snap it. Now we can select the camera and say to assign it to, and we'll use this top path here. If I hit the F9 key now, you'll see the type of motion that we have. It's following the target very nicely, turning the corners just like we expected. Remember, the target is sitting slightly in front, so we can illustrate that a little bit here by hiding the camera. Now, if I were to hide the camera here and hit my F9 key, you'll see that we're seeing an editor's view, so you'll see the target tracking along that path just like we like. If I were to put my attach point here and make a small triangle here, this triangle is going to represent the camera for us in the preview. I'm just doing this to illustrate, of course. And so I assigned it to the camera's path. And when I hit my F9 key, you can see that that small triangle is tracking 5% behind the other one in time. So the other one always stays ahead, and of course, since it's slightly lower, we'll be looking slightly down into the plane as it moves. Okay, let's go ahead and go back. We can take that and delete that now. I just wanted to show you how those move, and we'll show all. And our camera and our target are here. Now another thing I'd like to do is have the camera instead start way up away from the plane and zoom down into this. So I'm going to go to the x-axis here. Well, before I do that, I'm going to select that and make that the attach point. A flat view in the x-axis, back off a little bit, and go to isometric. And I'm going to page move down because I want to draw a path from here and go way up here. So I'm going to get my freehand tool. I put the attach point where the camera is, so that's where the polygon will begin to draw. And I'm going to draw a line here like so. Hit my tab key to add points, and go ahead and make it. Now, the relative length, I want to spend about a third of the animation or so coming down from here, and we can change the amount of time that this path is going to be active. So we're going to make this a fairly long segment like so. Now the camera is going to actually start up here now, fly down here, and then attach itself to this path, so we need to worry about times. I'm using my, well, let's go ahead and flat view on the Y here and look at what we have from this direction. Okay, the attach point there, this one we want to make a path. We want this path to run the whole length of the animation, so we want to have it, the delay in is when it will start, the delay out is when it will end. We'll have it end at, let's say, 30% of the animation. Now this is controls movement. These up here control rotation. You can have many members of rotation, as many as you need. For the movements, you can only have one level. So we're asking movement to start at 0% in the animation and finish at 30%. So we'll accept that. Now to compensate, I'm using the 7 key to rotate down so I can see my other two paths a little clearer, and coming in a little bit here, using the page move to move up. To compensate, the camera's going to move down this path for the first 30%. We'll select this path and say that we should alter that path. And again, in the movement block here, we don't want it to start until the animation is 30% complete. Similarly, on this path, we also don't want it to start until the animation is 30% complete. This one, of course, is still starting 5% ahead of the other. Okay, and we want it to finish at the end of the animation. So we'll accept that. We need to assign our paths. I'm using the cursor up key to move out a little bit, bringing it down, using the 1 key to rotate so I can see them a little clearer. Now this path here is controlling the camera presently, the one on top, and this path is where we want it to. So let's see if we can grab our camera here. Yes, we can. Move it out a little bit. I'm setting my attach point to the top of that, selecting the camera, right mouse button click here, snapped it to that point. Selecting the camera and telling it that during the animation it should be looking at this path right here. If I can find the point, there we go. Now this path here, we want to go ahead and, let's go ahead and select it down here somewhere. We want to assign it to that path, so we'll say assign a path, and we'll choose that top one here. And I'm going to hit the F9 key to see what we've got. Okay, so it's starting up very high, and looks like I've got my point order wrong. Of course, that was the first point in this path, so we're going to select the camera, and let's just hide it so we can select this path easy, and say to choose a new first point, We'll click OK and select this point. If I go ahead and open up my my manual mode here and select that point, you'll see that it is the first point in the path, point 0. This point here is the one we want to be second, and it's point 10. So obviously this is reversed, so we want to go ahead and select this and say to reverse the order of points on it. So now we're ready. We'll go ahead and show everything and hit our F9 key and see that we're going ahead and flying down into the bitmap just like we hoped. About this point now, that target should jump to its 5%. There we go, and we're swinging around and joining onto the arm, across the other arm, so you can see the type of motion that we're describing here. It's going to be very nice. We'll go back, and one more thing I'd like to do, instead of coming straight down and looking at this in a straight-on view, I want to see it rotated. So I'm selecting that point as the attach point, which is the bottom of this particular path. Going ahead and flat viewing, selecting the camera. I better hide that camera. And let's come in and make sure we get our attach point. Yeah, that's right where we want it. So I'm moving back out, selecting this path, and using my free hand to rotate it down a little bit, just like that. And of course what that's going to do is cause the camera to bank everything. As you'll see, the camera thinks of the Z as being straight up. So we'll show all. We want to go ahead and make sure we move our camera back over to that point, hitting my F9 key. And yeah, now the camera, of course, is banking, keeping the Z straight up so that it's going to fly into the target just like we want. That'll be very nice. Okay, our movement's all finished here. We'll go ahead and we'll think about textures for the plane. We could go ahead, of course, and just apply that bitmap like we had, like you saw in the trace mode, and it would fly around it. But it's often nice to have a little bit of meaning behind some of these things instead of just technical information. So I'm going to jump to a different group level here, group level 3, and select this checkerboard pattern here. If I were to hide only everything except those, that was a right mouse button click on the hide gadget. That'll hide everything except the selected polygons. It's very useful. And so you can see the pattern here. There are no polygons here or here or here, only in these sections. So we've got a checkerboard occurring here. So I'll select this, and I've already prepared my texture lists. We need to look at them a little bit here. I'm going to say textures, and I've got this called DaVinci Dance. We're going to select it. This is the most complex of the group. It actually has 17 levels in it. What I've done is the DaVinci drawing, of course, has 2 arms on each side and 2 legs on each side. And I've gone in and airbrushed out 2 of the arms and 2 of the legs in different places, naming them left, right, together, and spread for the position of the legs. And I'm going to have Aladdin blend these together during the animation to create a kind of a sub-animation of DaVinci's person dancing. So on the first level here, I have level 1. Don't know whether it's possible to read that on the television screen, but this is a 1. And level 1 runs from 0 to 0.125 or 1/8 of the animation, I think that is. If we go up to level 2 here, by the way, these are bitmaps, and so they can exist over top of each other, unlike attribute lists and many of the other lists you use in Aladdin. These can exist simultaneously and will be blended. So if I go up to level 2, you'll see that level 2 begins at 0.625, which is actually halfway. Going down to level 1, you can see it's halfway in level 1. Now, if I go down here, level 1 has a strength of 1 to 1. If I go up, level 2 starts with a strength of 0, and by the time level 1 is finished, it's taken over. It's 1.0. So you can see that whatever picture we have here in level 1, the left foot out, if we go up to level 2, the feet together is going to blend that over time, and by the time we reach 1/8 of the animation here, it will have completely taken over. And if we go up, you'll see that this is still the together picture from level 2, and at 1.0 holding it, and so that level 4, which will begin halfway through here, is going to take over, and the right foot is going to blend in. And so if we keep going up, you'll see that pattern repeating. A hold, and then a blend to take over. A hold, and a blend to take over. A hold, and a blend to take over. And this 0 to 1 on the very last one is DaVinci left, which was our first hold, if you remember. And so one more level here. The strengths on these ranged from 0 to 1, and then 1 across. If we go up on, at 0.7 or 70% of strength, I have put on a projection Z of the regular Da Vinci. That's the Da Vinci with the entire original drawing without the animation changes. So, and that's projected on the Z and will go on the entire plane. If I go down, you'll see that these are set for shingles, all of these. So they'll exist simultaneously on all the blocks. So we'll accept this. And those are applied. That was the most difficult of the group. Let's go ahead and show all. Remember that this is the one that I've done that. So we'll select the alternate one. I'm going to say textures. And we have one here I called Da Vinci Dollars. If we go ahead and take a look at it real quickly, it only has two members. The first one is a $20 bill. It was digitized by a friend of mine in California, Mark Corbizer, some time ago. It's quite a large. I'm using 24-bit here simply because 24-bit is the fastest type of bitmap to map, so it'll increase my speed. And I want to do quite a bit of frames, quite a few frames for this one. It's a $20 bill, the heads. So we'll go ahead and we'll use it projected or used as shingles. The Z really doesn't matter here. It will just adapt to the polygons wherever it finds them. The second level, if we go up here, is our Da Vinci, the full, just like we used on the other part of the grid at 70%. So it'll overlay the dollar bills, and as you can imagine, it will look as though we mapped the grid with the Da Vinci picture all at once. So we'll accept that, and that's been mapped. And now one more thing that I want to do, and I've already set this one up as well to save time. It's an overlay. On the member control, you'll find that I'm using the Da Vinci picture, and at 60% of the animation here, it starts at 0% of strength, fades to 60% by 70% of the animation. And if we go up, the next one is the same image, which runs from 0.7 to 0.8 and goes from 0.6 to 0. So in other words, I'm going to fade in the Da Vinci picture and then fade it out using a bump type on an overlay. And if we go up, there is another image here, which is the $20 bill. It's a bump map, and it runs here from 0 to not quite full strength. And interestingly enough, we're going to go ahead and have the entry X only cover the left half of the bitmap here, and by the time it reaches the exit side, it will cover the right half of the bitmap, so that bitmap will pan across in a bump map. Ought to look very nice and grow in strength towards the end of the animation. And for the final part of the overlay, I've done the $20 bill with the heads, and instead of Jackson's picture, I've replaced it with a Da Vinci image. You can, if you want to, think about what I might have meant by all of this imagery as it flies by, or you can just appreciate the technical aspects of it. So we'll accept that, and we're all ready to go on this one. Let's go ahead and render a frame here just to give you an idea. We'll go with an Opal Vision, just a low 320 by 200 Opal Vision, and we'll go ahead and render. And this will be the first frame. And of course, the 320 by 200 is much too coarse for what we want. The final image will be rendered at the full capability of the Opal Vision, and we'll single frame it to tape. There's one more thing I want to show you here. I could, if I wanted to, go ahead and turn on the convolve, like so. The convolve turned on in the background modification means that everything in the image will be convolved. And this is a simple tint filter that I've set up. If you can imagine that this were the pixel we were going to paint on the screen, these are the surrounding pixels. This is the relative strength that I'm going to add to this pixel from the surrounding one. So I'll use 12 times the original one, plus 3 times these ones, plus 1 times these ones, and then divide it by the total here, which is 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So in other words, I take all of these, sum them, divide that total by 28, and place this color here in that center pixel. This is called a tint filter and will result in a smoother image. So we'll go ahead and accept it. We won't use it on these low resolution ones that I'm using here. But when I do the final one, it will be applied, and that will help with some of the NTSC jittering from the interlace. It'll help smooth that out and make it appear better. Let's go ahead and redraw a frame, maybe 160 here. And you can see that the camera is going to be down on the plane. It looks like at this point we are just flying in on his arm. That's his head on the right there, and his 2 arms going up away from us here. We're sitting directly over one of the $20 bills, and the little dancers are all around us. And let's go ahead and redraw a frame, maybe 240 or so. I think by that time, yeah, our bump map is going to be laying in here. I have the anti-aliasing turned on for the bump map, and of course the camera view will still be visible underneath. Will still be flying over the plane. Ought to look very nice. Let me stop this one and go ahead and render some towards the end. We'll try maybe 330. I think by that time, yeah, we've got our $20 bill bump map, which is rolling along here. Looks very good. Looks very good. And of course the plane will still be visible underneath. And at this point, I'm going to stop the render so I can show you this. You can see here that the final part of the overlay is just beginning to blend in, and you can see that I've replaced Jackson's image here with the Da Vinci drawing. Of course, did most of this work in D-Paint. So that's all we need to do on this one. We'll go ahead and render it and show you when it's finished.